Hello, stream.
Chapter 39. We made our way to the stronghold and found the gates open. Found the gates open. Found the gates. Found the gates. Found the gates open. It's open. And found the gates open. Dietra's company was the last to return, and the guards on the wall looked relieved when she ordered them to close the gates after we had entered. She had ordered the rest of her troops to divide and make their way back through the city piecemeal, like the squadron we had rescued before meeting her. The rangers had held the trolls off as long as they could to give the rest time to get away. The moment we had entered the keep, Dietra turned to Maya. "Summon my counselors to the audience chamber immediately." "At once, Rangatira." Maya gave us a half-smile and a quick nod before darting off to do as she said. It left the three of us standing in the center of the bailey, crowds milling around us, while Dietra studied Mag and me. "If you would like," I began. "What? You could attend my council?" said Dietra. "How very magnanimous of you. But I do not require the advice of prisoners pressed into service for battle." "We could save lives." I pointed back towards the city. "We already did, Rangatira," I added, after just a moment's too much hesitation. "Then when it comes to battle again, I will summon you," she said. "But you will pardon me if I do not consider your advice more useful than my advisors, who have lived here their whole lives and know our situation better." I bit back the argument that sprang to my lips. She was not wrong. I might have been her younger brother, but we were no longer children, and it was not my place to countermand her, no matter how I hated to hear the word useful on her lips. "As you wish, Rangatira." For a moment I thought I saw her expression soften, but she only turned away to stride off towards the keep. "A shame," said Mag. "I had hoped the prospect of nearly dying in battle might have bridged at least some of the rift between you." "Believe me, that was a far more civil conversation than our last," I said. "Let us find Dryleaf and wait. Dietra may not want us to attend her council, but I want to know what is going on the second she comes out to tell everyone." Tell everyone. Dietra strode into her audience chamber, pulling her leather gauntlets off. She winced as she flexed her fingers. They had gripped her axe and shield so tightly that she could hardly feel them now. She winced as she flexed her fingers. They had gripped her axe and gripped. They had gripped her. They had gripped her axe. They had gripped her axe and shield so tightly that she could hardly feel them now. For a moment she bent and uncurled them while she looked around the chamber. It had been empty of guards, but they were filing back in now as their lord prepared for her meeting. She noticed something odd. The guards were filing in from the back of the room, from the stairway leading up to the nobility, from the back of the back of the room, back in from the in from the back of the room, from the stairway leading up to the nobility's living quarters. They should have been out in the main bailey, directing the influx of citizens being pressed into fighting service. Dietrich supposed they must have been drawn up to the walls to coordinate their defense, and taken the shorter route down to the council room. But she shrugged off such thoughts as Maya came hurrying up, nodding briskly to her. "Everyone—" "Vera," said Dietrich. "Did you check on her?" He nodded. "She is safe. Her guards have not left their posts since you sent them there." "Good. What else?" "Everyone is here. All the captains and the king's representative." "Is she still here?" said Dietrich with faint surprise. "I half thought she might try to sneak out with the refugees." Maya hid a smile, though it seemed a near thing. "She still has time. Many are still gathering to flee the city." Dietrich nodded and went to her chair. The councillors gathered around the dais, looking up at her with stern. The councillors gathered around the dais, around the dais. Around the dais. Gathered around the dais, looking up at her with stern, impassive faces. She saw no sign of eagerness in them, but neither did she see any doubt. They were ready to serve their lord. "The trolls will not give us much time to rest," said Dietrich. "They are looting the lower city now, but it is only a matter of time before they push towards the stronghold. We must discuss the strategy of our defense." Callan, the king's representative, took a hesitant step forwards. Her tongue crept out to moisten cracked lips. "Can we even hope to defend against them?" "We have no choice but to do so," said Dietrich. "Your forces have never faced so many," said Callan. "Without reinforcements from the king." "The king has sent soldiers and oil in support," said Dietrich. "But the trolls attacked earlier than we thought they would, and it seems their strategy is to overwhelm us before any help can arrive." "Strategy?" scoffed Callan. "They are trolls. They barely have—" Dietrich stood from her chair. Every ranger in the room bowed their head. Callan fell silent, eyes wide. "They have pushed into our territory. They have avoided our rangers at every turn. They even misled our scouts into believing they would attack at least a week later than they have. You do yourself no favors by assuming them to be mindless beasts, and you serve your Rangatira not at all." Of course," stammered Callan. "Forgive me, Rangatira, but if the king's forces may not even be coming, mayhap we should flee with the rest, for I do not see how we can defend Kawanga forever." "The king has sent their army. We might be able to hold the walls until it arrives, or we might not. We cannot know for certain, but we do know that we cannot abandon Kawanga. If the trolls face no opposition here, they will simply chase our people into the pass, where they will find them defenseless and slaughter them. We find them defenseless and defenseless and slaughter them. Defenseless and slaughter them. We who remain here are a rear guard to ensure that does not happen." You mean we remain here to die, said Callan. You have no hope or plan of escape. Dietra's anger bubbled. Dietra's anger bubbled up, threatening to burst. But before it could, Maya stepped from her side to face Callan from a pace away. I have no intention of dying in Kahwanga, said Maya, but I will happily throw you over the wall to our enemies if you see nothing but death in your future. Callan took a step back. Dietra noticed that the guards at the edge of the room had noticed that the guard noticed that the guards at the edge of the room had pressed forwards, as if they were ready to intervene if things should come to a fight. Fools, she thought irritably. Callan would...
Wordwin, good morning.
Callan would never dare to raise a hand against Maya, and if she did, he would have her on the floor faster than blinking. I have no wish to die, said Callan, making an impressive attempt to rally. That is why I counsel against this foolish course. You serve me, and through me the King of Colentin, said Dietra, letting an edge creep into her voice. If you think you serve us best by fleeing with the rest of the city's people, then by all means, do so. Return to the king in Tara and tell them what transpired here. But if you do not wish to die, you might find that a foolish course of action. They have no great love for cowards. Callan took several deep breaths, each time seeming as if she was about to say something. Her eyes flew wildly about, as if searching for any words that she thought might spare her. At last she shook her head and gave a hasty bow with her fist raised. I think I will retire to my chambers. A new missive must be written and sent to the king about our situation, and I should send it along before all the city's residents have passed us by. Dietra nodded in approval. Callan turned and began to push through the rangers on her way to the door, while Maya looked up and gave Dietra a wry look. She knew they were both thinking the same thing. Callan would doubtless decide at the last minute to deliver the message herself. She would be gone before nightfall. Callan reached the back of the crowd, but suddenly Callan reached the back of the crowd, but suddenly she pulled up short before two of the room's guards. Dietra frowned as she realized the guards had come even closer than before. Now the 12 of them nearly surrounded. Now the 12 of them nearly surrounded Dietra, Maya, and the 6 ranger captains that served on her council. What in the dark below are you doing? Dietrich barked. "Move aside and let her pass." The air filled with a hiss of drawn steel as the guards unsheathed their weapons. Chapter 40. Mag and I waited in the entrance hall outside. I paced back and forth in front of the doors, while Mag stood stoically, watching me walk by her each time. The hall was in chaos around us, with guards trying to give orders to their new army of recruits, while the new arrivals roved back and forth in great groups, trying to obey those orders but mostly just colliding with each other. 2 guards were posted at the entrance of Dietrich's council chamber, and they eyed us suspiciously as we walked back and forth. Mag gave them a smile. "Greetings, friends," she said. "How are you on this fine day?" Neither guard answered her. "The Rangatira's council should not take long," I told her as I walked by on my next pass. "Once she has decided what she wants to do, we can determine how to help her." "I hope it is as quick as you say," said Mag, "or she will come out here to find a trench where she once had an even floor in her hall. Stop pacing." I stopped, but I glared at her. "I will, but only because I want to." "Of course," said Mag. "This is no time for jokes, Mag. People are already dying, and—" From Dietrich's council chamber came shouts and the clashing of steel. As one, Mag and I and the guards turned towards the doors. But while the guards were still staring in confusion, Mag and I sprinted for the doorway. At the last moment, the guards turned and crossed their spears to bar it. "No one is permitted to—" "Oh, be silent," said Mag. snatching one of the spears and slamming the haft into the guard's head. The woman reeled backwards. "My apologies." I struck the other one in the face. He slammed into the door. With 2 quick jabs, Mag knocked her guard to the ground, senseless, and then took mine to the floor with a swift kick to the side. We threw open the doors and rushed inside to a scene of chaos. Dietra's rangers stood at the foot of her dais, facing outwards, blades in their hands. Only 4 remained, including Maya. 3 lay on the floor in swiftly spreading pools of their own blood. There, too, lay 2 people in guard uniforms. But 10 more guards remained on their feet, and they were pressing in towards the rangers with blades drawn. "Dietra!" I cried. Her gaze snapped up over the combat to see me, but she could not spare more than a glance as the guards pressed forwards and the rangers tried desperately to hold them back. Mag threw her spear before we reached the line. It impaled one guard straight through his chainmail. His hand scrabbled at his back, trying to grasp the thing. Mag reached him a blink later, planted a foot on his back, and dragged the spear out with both hands. Oku lunged, latching onto the leg of one of the other guards. The woman fell, and Oku's jaws crushed her throat. I had knocked an arrow. As Mag did her bloody work, I fired as fast as I could. 2 of the guards fell to my arrows. Maya joined his lord on her dais and found his own bow, and he sank a shot into the eye of a 3rd. But the other rangers had fallen now. One of the guards leaped for Maya and swung her sword for his face. He managed to block it with his bow, which snapped in half. The guard dragged a knife from her belt and plunged it into Maya's shoulder, then his gut. His eyes went wide. His hand scrabbled for the guard's face, but he only succeeded in gripping her helmet and pulling it off. Kaita. It was Kaita. Dietra and I froze in horror at the same time. And then Kaita plunged the dagger into Dietra's chest. She fell back, striking the chair and then the ground. "No!" I screamed. Kaita stepped forwards. She raised her dagger to strike again, to be sure. The arrow flew from my bow. It pierced straight through her forearm. She cried out and dropped the dagger. In shock, she looked up and noticed me for the first time. Then her gaze fell upon Mag closer by. There were only 4 guards left, and even as Kaita watched, Mag slew one of them. Oku lunged at Kaita, bowling her over, and I heard her scream as his fangs sank into her already wounded arm.
Morning, Erica. Good to see you.
Somehow she managed to throw him off. It gave her just enough time to rise and flee. One of the shades saw her go, and he tried to follow. Together they ran for the back of the room, to the staircase that would take them up into the keep. Oku went after them, silently, hunting. I sprinted forwards, already knocking another arrow. I loosed it at a shade on the dais from only 2 paces away. Distracted as he was by Mag, he never even saw the arrow that killed him. Mag slew the last one a moment later. "Dietra!" I cried, falling on my knees beside her. I seized her shoulder and pulled her up. She gave a deep gasp, fingers clutching the front of my jerkin. "Dietra!" I said again, my voice breaking. Sky above, she was alive. I seized her tabard and pulled it aside, trying to see her wound. I saw only metal glinting up at me. Chainmail. Several of the links were bent and pressed into her flesh, but she would survive. Lost for words, I could only take her shoulders and pull her into an embrace. But Dietra pushed me away. "Maya!" she said, wincing as she clutched at her chest. Panic had driven him from my mind. I looked over. He lay on his back, hands and arms twitching as he held the wound in his belly. I helped Dietra over to him. "Albern," said Mag, her voice toneless. "The weremage." "Go," I told her. "Go," I told her. "Find her if you can." Mag started off as I joined Dietra by Maya's side, but he looked up at me with wild eyes. But he looked up at me with wild eyes. "Vera." I felt a sickening lurch in my gut. "No, it is Albern. We are here." "No," he said. His voice shook with pain, grunting between gasped words. His eyes found Dietra's. My lord. Vera. All the blood drained from Dietra's face. Her hands twitched, wanting to hold Maya, wanting to pull away. She looked wildly from him to the doorway through which Kaita had fled. Still unsure, she looked back down at him. Maya. Go, growled Maya, glaring up at her in fury. Get out of here. I wagered it was the first time in his life he had ever dared to give her an order. But Dietra obeyed it, bolting for the back of the room. Mag hesitated, looking down at me. Go, I said. Guard her with your life.
Hey, what's up, Aftershock?
Guard her with your life. Mag nodded and vanished. The room settled to silence as I knelt by Maya's side. A cloak close at hand was free from bloodstains. I ripped it from the corpse it had adorned and began to tear strips off it. Keep holding that wound, I said. I will stanch the bleeding from your shoulder. Vera, he gasped. Another sickening lurch in my gut. Another sickening lurch in my gut. Lurch. There
you are. You ugly son of a bitch.
Another sickening lurch. Another sickening lurch in my gut. My name, not you. For a moment the pain increased, and he only winced and sucked in deep, desperate breaths. Vera, Dietra's daughter, forgive me. My hands stilled, and I could only stare at him for a moment. But I forced my mind back to the task, trying to find any way I could to stop him from continuing to bleed. Never mind that now, Never mind that now, I said. Just keep pressing that wound. No? Good, said Maya, managing a smile. His teeth were blood-stained, and each breath came in a deep, hissing gasp. Too deep. Stop talking, I ordered. Seen it, said Maya. Many times. Too many. He gave a rasping breath that might have been an attempt at laughter. Flecks of blood came out. Dark take you, I growled. The cloth I pressed to his shoulder soaked through with blood in an instant. I turned my attention to his gut wound. Orangatira needs her lead ranger. You are not relieved of your duty. No choice, said Maya. She needs... What she needs is for you to stop talking, I said. Lift your hands when I say. Count of 4. 1... He lifted one hand from the wound and seized my wrist. And from the wound and from the wound and from the wound and seized my wrist, staining my skin red. I met his gaze. His skin had gone deathly pale. A thin bubble of blood protruded from his lips and then burst. Each gasp was shallower, but he forced the words out regardless. She needs you to save her. Mag and the Rangatira have gone after her, I said. They will see to Vera. He shook his head. He could only move it a finger in each direction. No. Dietra. I felt his fingers slacken on my wrist. Dietra. Slowly, as though he were relaxing into sleep, his head sank back, but his eyes never left me, not even as I bowed my head over him, and the hall around us settled to silence. Chapter 41. She killed him? Said Sun. Alburn nodded slowly. She did. Did Mag catch her? He shook his head, never taking his eyes from the trail they were following, or rather that he was following, for Sun could not see it. She did not. Not then. She escaped again? Said Sun, incredulous, her voice rising. Mag was just behind her. We hesitated a moment too long, after Maya, said Alburn. Mag caught the other shade that tried to flee, but Kaida took her mountain lion form as soon as she could. She was on the wall and in her raven form before anyone knew what had happened, and then she took wing. Sun glared into the grass, picturing it in her mind, running it over and over as though by sheer force of will she could change what had happened. I cannot believe how she kept getting away from you. Did Mag not wish to catch her? Oh, she did, said Alburn. More than you can believe. More than she wanted to save the lives of the people of Kahwanga, certainly. Every time Kaita escaped us, it was sheer luck. If I had not lived it myself, I would not believe it. And though I do not mean to cast an even darker pall over what is already an unhappy tale thus far, I will say this. Many, many times have I seen evil people escape judgment, while good people meet an early end. The world should not be that way, but sometimes it is. I am no child. I do not believe that everything is always just and right. But Dark Below, at least tell me that she did not kill your... Alburn raised a hand. Sun stopped short, glaring at him. Are you shushing? Please, whispered Alburn. Do not speak for a moment. I think we are drawing close to the end of the trail. Somewhat mollified, Sun fell silent. Alburn's bow was in her hand, and his quiver on her belt. She drew an arrow, holding it nocked and ready. Where? She whispered. Not far, he said. Come, off the beaten path for a little while. Sun's face twisted. She could see no trace whatsoever of their prey, and certainly not a beaten path. But she followed Alburn as he cut suddenly right, working his way around the southern side of a great hill that rose to a cluster of reddish boulders at the top. It brought them to another hill, which Alburn circumvented again. But when they came to a third hill, this time he began to climb. Sun followed, and when Alburn began to walk in a half-crouch, she did the same. They reached the crest of the hill. 2 trees grew towards the north end of it, and they snuck up to one of them. A few paces from the edge of the hill, Alburn lowered himself to the ground, creeping forwards like a jungle cat stalking through grass. Sun did the same, though she had to restrain herself from moving too quickly. It was easier for her than for Alburn, with his missing arm. Together they sidled up to the edge of the hill and looked. They sidled up to the edge of. They sidled up.
There you are.
Sidled up to the. They sidled up to. Together they sidled up to the edge of the hill and looked down into a small dip in the land. Sun barely restrained a gasp. A camp sat in the lowest flat point in the land. A motley assortment of disheveled individuals lounged about in various positions of rest, many of them near a campfire with some meat suspended above it. There looked to be a few guards posted, but they were scant paces away from the others, and they sat on rocks or the flat ground. They hardly seemed to be looking out for a squirrel to shoot, much less intruders. But the center of the camp drew Sun's attention immediately. There she saw a sizable cauldron made of black iron, and full of an even blacker liquid. The sun's final rays only gave it a few hints of any color, and that was a dark red. Beneath the cauldron burned a flame like Sun had never seen before, black instead of red, with the barest hints of blue and gray flicking at the top of it. A flame that seemed to draw light from the air rather than bestowing it. Dark Below, hissed Sun. That is... Please do be quieter, said Alburn. That is a cauldron of blood, whispered Sun. And is that dark fire beneath it? It is, whispered Albern. Then those people are shades? No, said Albern. Not quite. But they have some idea of what the shades were, and despite that, they are trying to emulate them. His gaze flicked back and forth across the scene before them. He was surveying the scene, taking stock of the people and the layout of their camp. Do you mean to fight them? Fight might be a strong word, said Albern, but Fight might be a strong word. Strong word. Strong word. Fight might be a strong word, said Albern, but I do mean to stop them. But there are so many. I have never fought in a battle before. I cannot defeat a dozen foes. And you... Yes, said Albern, shrugging his right shoulder to highlight his missing arm. Not exactly the stalwart battle companion you might hope for. Then you do not think we can defeat them? Look there. Albern pointed to a crate, close to both the cauldron and the campfire. A guard on either side of it, and they are the only ones in the whole party who seem alert. I would wager that is where they keep the rest of their mage stones. We should tell the constables, said Sun. Said Albern. I have another idea. Let us get out of sight and wait until sundown. They slid back, away. They slid back, away from the edge of the hill. Once they were out of sight, Albern rose and walked down the other side of the hill, Sun just behind him. The two of us cannot hope to win against them. He smiled back over his shoulder at her. There are many ways to win. In Kahwanga we were well outmatched by the trolls. Yet we had an advantage, one we did not yet realize. An advantage? Said Sun. Oh yes, if you know something your foe does not, you always have an advantage. Let us get somewhere more private and have a bite to eat. We will take care of these conspirators at dusk. That should give us just enough time to finish this part of the tale. That is, if you want me to go on. Sun rolled her eyes and reached for the pouch of food at her belt. You already know the answer, old man. Answer, old man.
All right, next chapter is a bit of a long one, so I'm going to go refresh my coffee and walk around for a few minutes. Oh, we're getting so close. So close, y'all. How much time do we have left? We have 9 chapters. And that comprises about... Is that 2 hours? 9 chapters, 2 hours left. Woof. And I'm pretty sure that the next chapter is the longest one we have left, so it's all shorter after that. But yeah, I'm going to pick this back up again in a few minutes.
Chapter 42. After chasing Kaida out of the stronghold, Dietra and Mag returned to the council chamber. When she saw Amaya lying dead at the foot of her chair, Dietra looked ready to collapse. "He died bravely," I murmured. "Who cares for that?" said Dietra, her voice cracking. She sank to sit on the stairs of her dais, and I sat close beside her. I wanted to ask about her daughter, but I could not quite bring myself to name her. Not yet. Did you and Mag... For a moment she only stared at Maya's body, but at last she looked up. "We went after my daughter. Albern, I named her Vera. I wanted to tell you when... You should not have found out like that." "It is all right," I said at once. "I missed you," she said, her voice cracking. "And I thought, after Romil and Mother, and when you still did not return, I thought I would never see you again." "Dietra," I said, reaching over and taking her shoulder. "It is all right. I am honored." She bowed her head. "Well, she is safe." The guards outside her room never even saw the commotion. Kaita may have had plans for her, but she had to abandon them after you showed up. "That is a comfort, at least." Dietra looked at Maya's body. "I will call nothing a comfort today. Not today." 2 of her ranger captains had been slain, and the other 4 had been wounded, 2 of them grievously. They had been carried off to be attended by healers. That left 2 in the chamber. They knelt beside Maya's body like an honor guard, their heads bowed over him. Now they tried to rise, but they swayed as they did it. "No," snapped Dietra. "Sit. I will not have either of you fainting in my council chamber." The rangers settled back down at our feet, grateful looks upon their faces. "Thank you, Rangatira." Dietra rose and went to her chair, bowing her head and covering her eyes with one hand, her elbow resting on the chair. I looked to Mag, who stood a few paces off. Her expression was stony, but not emotionless. The battle trance was gone. The look on her face was one of disappointment, of frustration at losing Kaita yet again. "This is not over," I told her. "Well do I know it," said Mag. I nodded and looked up to Dietra. "If you still mean to hold council, might I fetch our friend, Dryleaf? He bears the wisdom of many years, and might have valuable advice." Dietra did not look up. "Why not? I seem now to have a dearth of counselors." She looked up suddenly. "Where is the king's representative?" "The thin woman wearing robes of the king's colors? Dead." "First to fall to the shades," growled one of the remaining ranger captains. "Of course she was," said Dietra. She waved a hand at me. "Go and fetch the old man." I bowed to her and went to retrieve Dryleaf. By the time I returned, Maya's body had been removed from the council chamber. Servants had removed many skins from the floor that had been stained with blood, and they were scrubbing at the stone beneath, trying to remove the stains. Dryleaf bowed low to Dietra with a fist on his forehead. "Rangatira," he said, "my most grievous condolences for your loss." "I thank you for them," said Dietra. "And if I was less courteous the last time you offered such graceful sentiment, please forgive me. Fetch him a—" She looked around the chamber for a moment, seeming lost. "Dark take me. I have no one left to fetch you a chair." "A moment," I said, ducking out of the room again. I went to the first guard I saw. "The Rangatira needs new guards in her council chamber. Choose 6 of them, but make sure you know them intimately well, and ask them questions only they would have the answer to. We have already been infiltrated today." Rumor of the shades must have spread fast, for her face went pale, and she nodded. "As you say." She turned to run off. I pointed to the next guard just a few paces away, who looked as though he had been trying to overhear us. "You," The Rangatira requires chairs for her council. Fetch. I counted us off on my fingers. 5 of them, the most comfortable ones you can find, but do not take too long. He nodded and ran to do my bidding at once. I realized in that instant that I had begun talking to the guards as I had spoken to them in my youth. That was a disconcerting thought. I returned to the council chamber. No one seemed to have moved or spoken since I had left. We waited in silence a while until guards filtered into the room, bearing chairs for us. They set them in a semicircle facing the dais, and then they retreated to stand at the edges of the room. Dietra studied them, likely inspecting their faces to ensure she knew them. "Very well," said Dietra, leaning forwards. Her rangers straightened where they were sitting upon the steps. "I suppose we had better begin. These are my ranger captains, Huya and Ahaya, both of the family Taumata." They rose from their chairs and bowed to us. I rose and bowed in turn and then gestured to myself and my companions. "I am Alburn of the family Telfer. This is Mag, the uncut lady, and Dryleaf, our friend." "Well met. We are honored to meet the uncut lady," said Huya. She was a thin but wirily muscled woman. The sides of her hair were trimmed to stubble, while the top was gathered into a tail that ran back and hung down to her shoulder blades. Her face was more tattoo than unmarked skin. She gestured to Ahaya. "My cousin and I were little more than whelps when last you were home. I am glad to see your return." That put me off for a moment, but I managed to nod. "You have my thanks." "With that out of the way," said Dietra, "let us begin. We must begin. Begin. Let us begin. Begin. Let us begin. Let us begin. We must defend Kahwanga as long as we can. To do that, it would be helpful to know when the trolls mean to attack." "Our scouts have been returning with regular reports," said Huya. "The trolls are still looting the city. We think it will be some time before they finish and start to climb the western side of the dale. Normally, I would say we could expect their attack tomorrow or the next day. Of course, they attacked the city sooner than we expected, so we cannot be certain." "I suspect they will be spurred to action when the weremage returns to them," I said. "She will be incensed by her failure to kill the Rangatira, and since she has ordered the trolls' attacks thus far, fury might lead her to order them to attack at once." "How do you know that she—" Dietra bit her own words off and shook her head. "No. You have been right about the weremage thus far. I will trust your counsel in this." "Your soldiers know how to fight trolls?" said Dryleaf. "Our trained soldiers, yes," said Ahaya. "The new arrivals from the city, well, they shall have to learn fast." "It is not too difficult," I said. "Cover the trolls with oil and use flame upon them. We should tell every guard to repeat those words until they are blue in the face. I wish we could drill it, but I think we will not have the time." "And we cannot waste any oil," said Dietra. "Our stores are low. The king's army will bring more, but who knows when they will arrive. Our new recruits shall learn it as they do it." "A trial by fire," I said. The moment the words were out of my mouth, I regretted them. It was just the sort of flippant joke I would have made to my mother when I was a child, inviting her wrath. But to my surprise, and not inconsiderable joy, Dietra gave me the tiniest smile, just as she had when we were young, and she did not want Mother to notice. "You should send scouts to the north and south as well," said Dryleaf, "just in case the trolls try to maneuver around Kahwanga and attack your folk who are fleeing upon the road." "But not too many," I said. "I doubt it will be necessary, for I hardly think that even the shades could influence the trolls in so subtle a way. They will almost certainly attack the walls. Send your scouts, but only 2 in each direction." As you say, said Dietra. She glanced over at Mag. You were very quiet. Over at Mag. At Mag. Mag. She glanced over at Mag. You were very quiet, more so than the last time you stood in this chamber. Have you no counsel to give? I think these two have the better advice, said Mag. I came to Turkana for the weremage, and nothing else. Dietra's mouth set in a thin line. Then that is your task in the battle. Kill her, if you get so much as half a chance. Mag bowed. As you command, Rangatira. As you command, Rangatira. Dietra nodded. Very well. That is all for now. Go and see to the orders I have given. She turned to me. Albarn, I wish to speak with you privately. I hesitated as the others rose and prepared to leave. Dietra must have seen the apprehension on my face, for she shook her head. This is not an order. Please, brother. I relaxed. As her rangers went to issue her orders and Mag remained with Dryleaf, I followed Dietra up the stairs to the same chamber where we had met last. There was a new bottle of wine on the table and 2 cups. She stopped in the middle of the room, staring at them. One of those cups was for Maya, she said. I suppose it is yours now. Thank you, I said. I poured for both of us and sat back, but I did not touch my wine. Dietra, on the other hand, drank half of hers in one gulp. She put it back down upon the table, staring at her own hand as it gripped the glass. You were right about Kaita. I wish I had not been. The past is barren ground for sowing wishes, she said, and the future is fertile for nothing else. My brows rose. I have never heard that wisdom. I doubt you learned it from Mother. I did not. It came from my late husband. At last Dietra looked up at me, but far from the pain I had seen there last time, her eyes were filled with a profound sadness, almost mourning. You should have come back, Albarn. When Romil died, you should have come back. And what would Mother have said? I asked her quietly. How could I have faced her? She who I could never quite say hated me, but simply did not seem to care. Yet she would have cared had I returned. Romil would not have died if not for me. She was only on that pass because she was returning after seeking me out. Yes, she was, said Dietra. That does not mean it was your fault. I know that, but Mother, she would not have seen it the same way. She would have hated me then. Dietra nodded slightly. You are... Dietra nodded slightly. You are right. She would have. She did. And without you there to turn her hatred upon, she turned it on me instead, and on herself. She spent nearly every waking moment in the pass, hunting down any Feldamarian who dared to enter our domain, until in the end, they killed her. But not before she had let me know just how useless I was to her in her time of loss. I shook my head. Dietra, no one should have suffered that. Least of all you. I'm sorry. No, that was not your fault either. She sighed and pushed her chair back a few fingers. And we have no time to worry about it now, in any case. Kaita will be back. I doubted you before, but no longer. If we are to die here, as might well be the case, I would sooner do it by your side than alone. Will you stand with me?" I nodded. "I will help you save your people." "Thank you." It came out as a whisper, though I do not think she intended it to. She took a deep breath, obviously steeling herself. "Albert, my daughter, Vera. I never knew that you were Ander. I would never have—" She trailed off. The sound of the name caused my chest to grow tight. The sound of the name caused The sound of the name caused my chest to grow tight. But this was nothing like when Romil had said it to me, on the edges of that sellsword camp, or when I thought Maya had said it to me. This feeling was strange. Because never, in all the early years I had spent in Tokana, had I ever dreamed that someone would be proud to name their child after me. "It is a perfect name," I managed to say. "I'm sure it suits her beautifully. Better than it ever suited me." Dietra gave the first full, genuine smile I had seen since my return to Tokana. "It does, at that. I'm going to send her with the rest of the refugees, and I must do it soon. And I must do it. Must do. And I must do it. Must do it, and I must do it. I'm going to send her with the rest of the refugees, and I must do it soon. But before she goes, would you like to meet her?" I felt dangerously close to shattering, so I remained silent. But I nodded. Dietra rose and left the chamber. When she returned, she brought a little girl who could not be older than 12. The girl's eyes were wide and wonderstruck as she looked up at me. It was like looking at a painting of my... It was like look... It was like... me. It was like looking at a painting of myself at her age. Dietra kept her hand on Vera's shoulder, looking at me with obvious apprehension. I smiled and held out my hand. "Hello," I said. "I'm Albert." Vera's eyes went wide. She looked up at her mother, who nodded, and then back to me. "You are my uncle," she said in a quiet voice, putting her hand in mine. "I am." "Mother says I look just like you used to." Dietra's hand clenched on her shoulder. "Vera." "It is all right," I told her quietly, before smiling at Vera again. "Your mother could not be more right. I only wish we had more time to talk, but you have somewhere to go." Vera's smile dampened, and her eyes filled with doubt. "You have somewhere to go." You have somewhere to go. "I only wish we had more time to talk, but you have somewhere to go." Vera's smile dampened, and her eyes filled with doubt as she looked up at Dietra. "I told her I did not want to leave." "Yet you must. Your mother is doing what is best for you." I met Dietra's eyes. Parents always try to do that. Some of them fail, but not your mother." Vera frowned, but then she took a hesitant step forwards, and then another, and then she hugged me about the waist. It startled me, and a long moment stretched before I thought to embrace her in return. "I am glad I met you at least," said Vera quietly. "Might we talk more when we return?" "I hope so, child. In fact, I promise that we will." Chapter 43. Kaita flew towards the northern edge of the city. Kaita flew towards the northern edge. The north. Kaita flew towards the northern edge of the city. Great swells of edge of the city. Great swells of warm air rose before her from the flames of Kahonga's burning buildings, but she flew burning buildings. Burning. Kahonga's burning building. Burning. Her from the flames of Kahonga's burning buildings, but she flapped anyway, powering her wing muscles with sheer fury. Why in the dark below was Mag there? She raged in her mind. They were in prison, both of them. Again, always again, she robs me of my victory. At last she reached the city's northern borders. The shades had gathered there, only showing themselves after the trolls pressed deep into the city streets. Now they waited, unwary, for the fighting had moved far away. Kaita landed in their midst and shed her raven form, even as many shades stepped away from her in alarm. "Report!" she snarled, as soon as she had the mouth to speak the word. Phelan, her captain, stepped forth, looking only slightly unnerved by her transformation. "We are ready to strike on your order, Not my order," snapped Kaita. "I will not be here to command you, and so I leave it to you. Take our forces to the western end of the city. The moment you see the trolls attack, join them at once. You know where to strike to put our numbers to best effect." "Yes, Commander," said Phelan. "Our soldiers are prepared. We have brought ladders and—" "I know what you have brought," roared Kaita. "I created the plan, and it is almost complete. Tonight we wipe the family of Telfer from the face of the world. Now move!" His face reddened, but Kaita had ceased paying attention. She stalked south, away from the camp. Before she had even finished passing through their ranks, her eyes glowed and her form began to shift again. Shades cried out and dived aside as she suddenly grew gigantic. Gray, stone-solid skin swept across her, and her ears turned to giant flaps that swept out from her head. In a moment, the transformation was complete, and she had taken Gatak's shape. She broke into a troll's gallop, thundering out of sight of the shades on all fours to vanish into the city. She had never taken her troll shape where the other shades could see. If the trolls ever discovered her secret, the whole plan would come apart. But everything was nearing completion now. Even if there was a traitor among the shades, they would not have enough time to tell the trolls before the battle would be over. She began to spot trolls amid the wreckage of Kawhanga's buildings. They were picking through the destruction, searching for food. The first time she spotted one, she stopped and bared her teeth at him. "Come, we are readying for the attack. Dotag needs all the pack." The troll scowled at her, its ears rising. "He said we could rest and eat." "And now he needs us," said Gatak. "You are of his pack. Come." She gathered every troll she could find as she went, until soon there were at least 24 trailing along behind her, though none walked with quite her speed or purpose. She searched for the front lines of the gathered pack. There she would find Dotag. A pack leader had to lead. Dotag had been in the thick of the fighting when they had attacked the city, and he would be there again when they assaulted the Telfer stronghold. At last she spotted him, in a large square towards the city's western end. A great pile of produce and bread had been put before him, tributes from trolls in the pack who looked to curry favor. Dotag was picking at the pile, searching for the choicest morsels to eat first. He looked rather ragged. There was a tear in his left ear that had not been there that morning, and there were burn marks on his right flank. Kaita even saw some broken skin on his right shoulder. A very large building must have fallen on him for that to happen. Kaita ignored it and stalked up to him. Dotag noticed her at the last second, and his ears dipped in pleasure, but they flew sideways in alarm as Kaita pressed her face close to his. "We have rested long enough." She thrust a stubby finger up the long slope rising to the west. "The humans have gathered in their fortress. Now is the time to tear it down and kill them all." Dotag very nearly looked frightened of her. "We do not need to attack now," he said. "They have run from their city. They know we have won." "We have to kill them," roared Kaita. "They have broken the pact." "So have we," came Apok's voice. Kaita snarled and turned. The younger troll stood at the edge of the square, her stony, angry gaze fixed on Dotag. "I speak to Dotag," snarled Kaita, "not to you." "And you tell him that the humans broke the pact," said Apok, stalking forwards. "Yet we have attacked their city. We have killed them. That too breaks the pact. Only after they did it first." "What then?" said Apok. "Do we kill more? They will bring their armies. They will bring oil and fire.
Already today they killed many of us. The pack lost more trolls today than it did in all the years Chuck led us. Because more trolls followed Dotag than ever followed Chuck, said Kaita. Dotag is a great leader. He leads more of us, and he leads more of us to die, said Apoc. The humans will drive us out of this city, and then they will drive us farther, beyond the bounds of the pact, even out of the mountains. Will you call that victory?
Dotag looked more uncertain than ever. Kaita whirled on him.
The Telfers, she said. They are the ones who broke their word. Do whatever you want after they are dead, but you cannot allow them to live after breaking the pact. The Lord wishes them to be dealt with. Trolls do not follow your human lord, growled Apoc, taking another step forwards. Trolls fight for ourselves. We follow ourselves. I think you have left for so long that you have forgotten.
Kaita could feel herself close to the breaking point. But if she attacked Apoc, even Dotag would not be able to protect her from the other trolls in the pack. The pack. Inwardly, Kaita grinned. Apoc might speak against her, but she could not speak against Dotag without repercussions.
I follow Dotag, said Kaita. He leads the pack, not I. Do you challenge him?
Apoc hesitated. It was a long, uncomfortable moment in the square before she spoke, but Kaita knew she had already won.
No, said Apoc.
Then be silent.
Kaita turned back to Dotag and lowered her voice.
We have the Telfas trapped. Apoc is right about one thing. The humans will bring their armies. They will bring their fire. But if we kill the Telfas, no human will ever dare to break the bonds of the pact.
Still, Dotag did not look entirely convinced. He pawed at the pavement of the town square, eyeing the pile of bread and produce before him.
We have gone far enough for now. Many have died. More are hurt. We need to rest. We need to kill them,
said Kaita, her voice rumbling with fury.
They will never leave these mountains until we throw them out. You lead this pack now. You must be strong. You must protect us from the humans. And you must do it now. The Lord will reward you for it.
Dotag looked more reluctant than ever, but he tore his gaze away from the pile of food before him, looking up towards the western rim of the valley. At last he turned to the other trolls in the square.
We attack.
Dotag tried to make his voice loud and commanding, but it rasped, weary from all his roaring during the battle earlier.
Gather the pack. We will destroy the humans' home. We will rest when they are all dead.
The trolls lumbered off to do his bidding. Dotag turned to Kaita, his expression full of doubt, but Kaita only smiled. But Kaita only smiled. Chapter 44. Maya's body was burned in the center of the stronghold's bailey, with everyone in attendance. Dietra had Vera off to one side of her, and I stood to the other. When the flames began to subside, Dietra sent Vera away to join the rest of the refugees. With her went a dozen guards for protection. I could not help but think that a dozen more soldiers would be useful in the coming battle, but I said nothing. Dietra had to know it. But if we died in the coming battle, then Vera would be the last remnant of our bloodline. Not that it seemed to make much difference to Dietra's soldiers. At first she asked for volunteers, but no one stepped forwards. I was shocked until I realized the soldiers did not see the assignment as an honor. They saw it as fleeing from the battle to come. It astounded me, and I could not help but wonder if they would have been so eager to stay and die at their lord's side if my mother had still been the Rangatira. In the end, Dietra had to order a dozen of them to leave with Vera. The first tried to argue. She subsided when Dietra asked her if she thought Vera's life was not worth saving, in which case Dietra would happily strip her of rank and send her out to face the trolls first. After that, she and the others went along quite meekly, if not exactly willingly. Mag and I faced much the same resistance when we told Dryleaf to leave the city as well. The old man flatly refused until we threatened to tie him up and stick him in the back of a wagon. He could not help in a fight, and though his counsel was valuable, the time for advice was long past. We sent Oku with him. The hound trotted along at the heels of Dryleaf's horse, looking back at Mag and I often. For once, he did not seem to understand what was going on, and it nearly broke my heart. With Vera seen to and all the other preparations at the stronghold underway, Dietra's remaining rangers and I convinced her to rest. She retired to her chamber to sleep, but not before assigning a servant to find lodgings for Mag and me. "If I am being forced to sleep until the battle, then I will force you to do the same," she said. I was more than happy to obey. The battle in the city had not lasted long, certainly not as long for me as it had been for Dietra, but I was exhausted to the point of collapse. When they showed me to my bed, I paused only long enough to stow my bow and sword before I fell upon the mattress, fully clothed. I have some vague sense that Mag came into my room just before sleep claimed me. If she meant to talk, she left disappointed. The blast of a horn woke me in an instant. I had slept for 3 hours, but it felt like no time at all. Groggy, I belted my sword on and slung my bow across my back, stumbling from the room to find Mag waiting for me. "Did you sleep?" I said. Sleep? "Did you sleep?" I said, my speech slurred with weariness. "A bit," she said. Her words were clear and her eyes looked as sharp as ever. "Less than you, though yours looks to have done you less good." I waved her words away. "Leave off. Let us go to Dietra." We found her on the eastern wall, looking into the dale below. The night sky was dark above us, but the landscape was fairly well lit by the fires that still burned in the city, which reflected off the pall of black smoke hanging in the air. A chill wind blew hard into our faces, and I pulled my cloak tighter as I shivered. Dietra looked up at our approach and gave us a stiff nod. "They are coming." I squinted down into the darkness. Down into the darkness. Down into the darkness. I squinted down into the darkness. The burning city cast a tint across the world, so that everything was only visible in shades. So that everything was only visible in shades between black and crimson. But I saw no signs of movement down below, no indication of the trolls at all. "Where?" I said. "My scouts reported it," said Dietra.
Rest assured, they will be here soon.
That prospect urges neither rest nor assurance. Mag laughed and clapped my shoulder, probably a bit harder than she had to. Relax, Albern. I will be here to keep you safe. Despite herself, I saw a smile tugging at the corner of Dietra's mouth.
Yes, see that you do, will you? I have waited for the fool to return home for quite some time. It would be a tragic shame to lose him now.
Like an old pet, said Mag, brightening immediately. I am not.
Yes, exactly,
said Dietra, and now she could not stop the grin from spreading across her face. I subsided, glowering into the darkness of the dale. But despite my objections, the smile on Dietra's face was worth any amount of jibes aimed at me. Her good mood faded as she returned to business.
You will want pitch arrows, she told me. There are many stored along the wall. Fill your quiver. There are torches and braziers, too, which you can use to light them.
She turned to Mag.
I take it from the spear in your hand that you are not much of an archer.
Not much of one, no, said Mag.
You will want oil, then,
said Dietra.
Your spear will be little help other than as a distraction. Carry a few flasks on your belt. If you can soak a troll with oil, that will let the archers take care of them. The flasks are stowed near the arrows.
As you say, Rangatira. Mag bowed to her and went to fetch them. I stared at her retreating back, scowling. Finally, I caught Dietra giving me an amused look, and I turned the scowl upon her. She keeps bowing to you. Dietra smirked.
She bowed to me when you all first arrived.
When she was trying to deceive you, I said. The last few times it has been genuine.
I consider it a great honor to receive such courtesy from the uncut lady herself.
Together we peered out into the darkness, searching for the first sign of our foes. They are coming sooner than we thought. I had hoped they would rest. Dietra shrugged.
We did not think they would attack the city at all for at least another week. It is the Shade's doing.
Her expression grew grim.
It is Kaita's.
We must look for her in the battle, I said. If she falls. Dietra shook her head.
I have little hope that will stop. I have little hope. I have little hope that will hope that little hope that will I have little hope that will stop. I have little hope that will stop them. She may be spurring the trolls on, but she seems to be doing so from the rear. And even if we fell her, the trolls do not follow humans. They have been persuaded to make up their minds, and that will not change simply because one human dies on the battlefield.
It might make me feel better at least, I muttered. She sighed, frowning down at her feet.
I suppose I agree.
Her actions were not your doing, I said.
I kept Maya from working with you, as he wished to do. I wanted to make it right with her somehow, after what Mother did, I mean.
That was a kind and just thing to do.
But not a wise thing to do,
she said. I doubt we would have found her even with Maya's help, and I would not have trusted unsworn strangers from another land any more than you did. Dietra considered that for a moment, and then she shook herself.
Well, we can never repeat the past. There is only the present and whatever future remains to us.
If we can hold until the king sends their army. If we can hold until the If we can hold until the king sends if we can hold until the king sends their army.
That is doubtful. We have never seen more than a dozen or so trolls at a time. We managed to kill a few in the city, but there are still nearly 200 of them, and I have scarcely twice that number of soldiers at my command.
But you have your walls, I told her. They were built to withstand trolls.
Nothing can withstand them forever.
Something in her tone worried me. For a moment I forgot that she was the Lord Telfer, that she was, by rights, my Rangatira. For a moment I saw only my sister. I reached out and gently took her shoulder. Deidre, you cannot give up. She did not look at me.
I will not surrender to them if that is what you mean.
I mean you cannot give up hope.
Hope,
she snorted.
I have been so ill-acquainted with it for so many years that I no longer know what it looks like. And how am I to be reminded now, when the night is dark and an unstoppable foe lurks just beyond the doorstep? I am Lord Ditra of the family Telfer, Rangatira of Tokana. It looks as though we will be the last of Mother's children to fall. If you had remained in Strapa, that might have left me with some small hope, the idea that you could return and take my place. But if one of us falls tonight, we both shall.
There is always Vera, I said, and I never thought I would return here at all. No one knows what fortune may bring.
Nor whether it will be kind or cruel.
At last she met my eyes and smiled, but I could see that it was mostly for show. She reached out and gripped my shoulder.
Go and fetch yourself some arrows. Be ready for the call to retreat. If they take the walls, we will fall back to the keep. Above all, look after yourself. I do not know if we can survive this battle, but if we can, I expect you to emerge on the other side of it.
I can only promise that I will try, I told her. But then, I've been trying to stay alive for a good long while now, and I've managed it so far.
Then take this as an order from your Rangatira. Stay alive tonight.
Only if you do the same. I bowed, and then I stepped forwards to place my forehead against hers, the act of greeting and parting between family. We parted, me to fetch my arrows and her to see to the last arrangements of defense. Soldiers gathered atop the eastern gate and all along its wall, with only a token force left to the western defenses. Shades or no, we did not suspect the trolls would suddenly show a gift for strategy. They had not done so in any of the towns they had attacked. They would throw themselves at the first thing they saw, the eastern wall, and break it. And why not? I thought. We cannot stop them. We cannot even hold them back for all that long. I stamped that thought down at once. One thing I knew, at least, from my many years as a sellsword. Things only become hopeless when you decide to abandon hope. Chapter 45. The trolls approached the stronghold out of the darkness, silhouetted by the fires in the city. They gathered well within arrow range, but we loosed no shots. Arrows would be pointless against their stony hides. Pointless until they approached close enough to strike with oil and then flaming arrows. Every soldier on the wall remained stock still, gazing out at our gathering foe. I cannot speak for the rest of them, but my heart was filled with fear. Trolls had been a story of terror for me since I was a child. They had killed many of the people I had once called mine, and before the night was over, I was sure they would kill many more. Nearly 100 archers lined the wall. Besides the bows in their hands, they had stores of oil flasks ready to throw. We expected the gatehouse to be the focus of the trolls' assault. There were 2 gates, both made of wood reinforced with a grid of thick steel bands. We would defend the outer gate as long as we could, but that would not last long. That would not last long. But that would not last long.
Damn right, Erica. That's kind of how we're operating. We're like, hey, do we want this thing? No, Wow, I've been muted for a while, haven't I? You're damn right, Erica. That is how we've been operating. We're like, hey, do we want this thing? No, no, no. Do we want this thing? Yes? Okay, let's get it.
That would not last long. Once the trolls broke through into the gatehouse, there were great cauldrons of oil ready to pour atop them through murder holes. The second gate would be sturdier, for there were 3 dozen.
That's awesome, Erica.
The second gate would be sturdier, for there were 3 dozens of soldiers in the bailey ready. For there were 3 dozens of soldiers in the bailey ready to bolsters in the bailey. Of soldiers in the bailey ready to bolster it. They were each equipped with bracers, long iron poles like spears, but with flat metal plates at the end instead of pointed spearheads. They would hold the plates against the gate and step on the other end, like infantry preparing for a cavalry charge. As I looked upon the massive limbs of the trolls arranging themselves before us, I wondered if the limbs of the trolls arranged massive limbs of the trolls arranging themselves before us. I wondered how long the second gate would last. Deetra joined me above the gatehouse as the trolls looked to be finishing their preparations. Her expression was grim as she surveyed them. There is their leader. She pointed to a large troll at the head of the pack. He was not quite so large as I had feared, but he was clearly in charge. The other trolls moved around him, keeping an eye on him if they were close, as though ready to move out of his way or to follow him if he began the advance. As I watched, he slammed his fists into the ground and gave a loud, barking command.
Real quick, I gotta use the restroom, and I'm also gonna refresh my coffee. Back in a couple. All right.
But then my eyes were drawn to the troll just beside him. I did not know trolls very well, but I thought this one was female, and she did not treat the leader like the others did. She barely seemed to notice him. Instead, her gaze was fixed unswervingly upon the wall and upon the keep behind it. It seemed strange behavior, and it stuck out in my mind. My thoughts were pulled back to the present as the trolls charged. Roaring with fury, they crossed the open ground with great bounding leaps. I could feel the thunder of their coming reverberate through the stone wall beneath my feet. My fingers tightened on my bow, and I fingered the oil flask in my right hand. "Ready?" Dietra's sergeants echoed her cry along the wall. The troops held their flasks aloft. The trolls drew close. Now we could see the rage in their eyes. They drew within 30 paces of the wall, then 20. I wagered I could throw that far, but no command came. I glanced at Dietra from the corner of my eye. She held steady. The trolls drew within 10 paces. "Throw!" 100 flasks of oil arced through the air. Their glass glittered in the light of our braziers. "Loose!" I had knocked the second I let go of the flask, and now I fired my flaming arrow straight at it. It shattered, flinging its flaming contents into the face of an unlucky troll right next to the leader. The troll stumbled and fell upon its face, screaming. His fellows ran straight over him, pressing him deeper and deeper into the snowy mud. It did not seem to harm him, but only to stifle the flames. Fire had ripped into the troll's front line. Dozens of them reeled away from the wall. They screamed in pain and tried to batter the blazes that roasted them. But more trolls pushed forwards, slamming into the wall. Slamming into the wall. Fists as large as...
Hey, thanks for the follow, Big 075.
Fists as large as my torso cracked the stone. The wall shook, but it held. Some trolls scrambled up the backs and shoulders of their companions, leaping for the ramparts. Soldiers dropped their bows and hacked at the trolls' hands with steel. Dietra gave a great cry and raised her axe as a stubby hand appeared in front of her. The weapon was called Uira, and it was an heirloom of our house. It flashed with runic light as she brought it down, cleaving straight through the troll's forefinger. The creature fell back to the ground with a roar. They had massed below us at the front gate. Their leader was off to the side, fighting to push through his pack and reach the gate. I threw a flask at him, but he saw it and batted it aside, where it shattered over the face of another troll. Flaming arrows streaked through the darkness, and fresh bursts of fire exploded over the trolls' heads and shoulders. They surged back. For a moment I thought they might turn and run, but their leader gave a great roar and pressed forwards, slamming his fists into the gate. The others gained new heart, and they crashed into it with all their fury. It shattered with the sound of splintering wood and rending metal. The trolls poured into the gatehouse and straight into the second gate. It rocked on its hinges, but the soldiers in the bailey held. More trolls crowded into the space, though only a dozen could fit. The leader held his ground rather than enter the gatehouse. Dietra turned to her soldiers atop the barbican. "Oil!" she roared. The soldiers seized their cauldrons and heaved. The iron turned on great wooden wheels. I ran forwards to lend a hand, seizing the bottom of a vat and lifting with all my might. Soldiers thrust torches into the oil as it came pouring out, and a wave of blistering heat washed across my face. Flaming oil poured down over the trolls like the spewing of a volcano. I saw one of them look up just as it came pouring down. Oil flooded her face, pouring down her throat. She fell to the ground, clawing at herself. It lasted only a moment before she stilled forever. The oil coated everyone else who had entered the gatehouse, killing most in seconds. The others fled back into seconds. In seconds. Killing most in seconds. The others fled back into the open air, slamming into the rest of the pack, smearing them with the flames. The trolls' line shuddered and began to draw back. I saw the first few begin to turn and run, and then it was like a bursting dam. As one, they pounded away from the wall, separating themselves to avoid spreading the fire any more. Some did not make it back, the oil and flames claiming them before they could make it more than a few paces away from the wall. The trolls ran out to beyond throwing range again, lurking on the edge of darkness, pacing back and forth and licking their wounds. Dietra was only a few paces away. Both of us were covered in sweat, leaning heavily against the wall. Her helm had come off sometime during the battle. I saw it 2 paces away and went to fetch it for her. "Thank you," she gasped as I placed it in her hand. Mag approached. She strode between the soldiers who had collapsed in exhaustion against the wall, and she looked for all the world as if she were taking a stroll through the woods. She raised 2 skins in her hands. "I've brought water." Dietra and I each took a skin from her and drank greedily. It was not quite cold, but it was a good deal cooler than the heat atop the wall, drifting up from the pools of burning oil and the flaming corpses of trolls below the wall. "How did the gatehouse fare?" said Mag. "Better than it could have," I said. Dietra's mouth gave a grim twist as she pulled the helm on. "We do not have enough oil to refill the cauldrons. We will have only flasks and arrows when they return. How did the fighting go farther along the wall?" Mag frowned slightly. "We lost some soldiers. The trolls flung rocks at them from below. I feel useless up here. All I could do was stab their fingers when they tried to climb up, like a wasp attacking a bear." "Enough wasps can ruin a bear's day," I said. She pointed out into the darkness. "That only works if there are many wasps and just one bear. This is quite the reverse." "Yet even one sting can hurt. Mayhap they will give up and flee home." Dietra arched an eyebrow. "That is a poor joke, brother." I shrugged. "What other kind is there on a night like tonight?" On a night like tonight. Kaita, still in the form of Gatak, stalked up to Dotag. His right arm was curled up to his chest, and he probed gently at a nasty burn he had received in the fight around the gatehouse. As she approached, Dotag looked up, and Kaita was troubled by his resentful look.
"We have rested long enough," she said. "We must attack again before they have time to regroup." "Many died," said Dotag. "We are not ready." "They cannot stop us," said Kaita. "Some died, but we have many more." "The gate," said Dotag. "They burned us. No one will go back in there again." "That was most of the oil they had," said Kaita. They will not be able to pour such fire down upon you again. They will not be able to pour. They will not be able to pour such fire down upon you again.
How do you know that? Said Apoc, whom Kaita had not noticed standing close by. Burns covered most of her chest, but her eyes were sharp, and she looked upon Kaita with suspicion.
What?
Snarled Kaita.
How do you know of the human's oil, Gatak? The Lord has told me,
said Kaita.
He knows many secrets. He has much power. He knows we will win. I think your lord is a meddling human,
rumbled Apoc.
A human who wishes to control us.
Kaita took a lunging step forwards and smashed her fists into the dirt.
You dare to speak ill of him?
Gatak! She froze at Dotag's voice. He was scowling when she turned back to him. Immediately, Kaita dropped her ears and stooped, making sure she stood almost a pace shorter than he.
You may trust my words, Dotag, she said soothingly. The Lord assures our victory.
Dotag gave a snuff. He looked uncertainly up at the stronghold wall and then looked past Kaita to Apoc.
Why do you look at her?
Said Kaita.
She would have us all turn and flee from this place. She would not have us take these mountains for our own. Does she lead the pack, or do you? He does,
growled Apoc.
Not me, not you.
But this was too much for Dotag. He pounded a fist on the ground.
I lead. We attack again.
He glared past Kaita to Apoc.
I will attack the gate myself, and you will come with me.
Apoc's nostrils flared, but she ducked her head and turned away. Dotag grunted and turned to Kaita. He spoke in a lower voice, so low that only she could hear.
You said the other humans would help. Where were they?
Kaita ducked her head.
They could not reveal themselves. We had to break the outer gate. Now that that is done, they will lend their strength. Done. They will lend their strength. That is done. They will lend their... Now that that is done, they will lend their strength to ours. You will take the wall and then kill everyone inside.
Dotag's eyes narrowed.
You did not say that before.
Kaita suppressed a momentary surge of anger that a troll would think himself worthy of questioning her counsel. But of course, she could not say that.
I told you they would help us take the inner gate. That is what they will do.
He stared at her a long moment. Kaita met his gaze, unflinching. At last Dotag snorted and turned away.
Tell the others. We attack. Now.
Ooh, we're getting close. on, upload, you piece of crap. I don't care who you are. Now clean my jowls. Okay. Oof, slow on that one. That's all right. Alrighty. I am ending off for now, which means I'm going to toss a raid to Fairy Wings. Go say hi to her for me. I might be back later. The family has to run out and do some errands, including getting passports, refreshed passports for everyone. So, if I can manage to stream later, I will. Otherwise, it'll probably be Monday. Maybe stream over the weekend, but maybe not. We will see. Thanks for coming and hanging out, everybody. Good to see you, Aftershock, Erica, Wordwin. Ugh. And, yeah, until next time, peace out, y'all. Catch you later. Bye.
We, vlog!